What's up, guys? I'm back with another build. Today we're going to show you the CC build. I've gotten a lot of requests for this one specifically. It helps tremendously in legendaries, but it's also viable for heroics too. If you're with a group that is struggling a little bit and staying alive, this build can go a very long way to keep your team healthy and happy, and beating those heroics and legendaries with relative ease. So we'll start off here with the idea behind CC. CC is crowd control, if you've never heard the term before. And the idea is to occupy the enemies, with some kind of crowd control effect so that, in effect, they can't shoot back. So the main skills that we're going to use to utilize that is the Blinder Firefly, which you can see down here. And then, for whatever reason, it shows the wrong logo, but this is actually the EMP Jammer Pulse. Very important for legendaries specifically because you're dealing with White Tusk or Black Tusk in white uniforms. And Black Tusks are very susceptible to EMP. And then, of course, all mobs are very susceptible to blind. So the idea behind CC build is to be able to chain CC effectively enough so that you can pretty much keep the enemies locked down nearly 100% of the time, or 100% of the time. The interesting thing that I tried to incorporate into my CC build is like, man, I really want a CC build, but I don't really want to just like not do damage. It's like most CC builds, you might as well pick up a handful of rocks and just chuck them at them because that's about as much damage as you're going to do. So I had the idea, like, man, how do I make this so that I can do CC effectively, but I can also deal some damage along with it? And I came up with this build. So we're looking at 4-piece hardwired with a Overlord chest piece, all reds, and the Contractor's gloves, again, all reds for the DPS aspect of it, right? Now, the idea behind the hardwired, and a lot of people knock hardwired and say, oh man, hardwired's no good. It is good in certain circumstances, this probably being the foremost. But the idea behind it is the way that hardwired works, if you're not familiar with the 4-piece talent, it's called feedback loop. Whenever you use or cancel a skill, your other skill is automatically refreshed and increases total skill damage and repair by 10% for 20 seconds. This can occur at most once per 20 seconds. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this here. When we use one skill, it refreshes the other, and you kind of ping pong back and forth. But there is this cooldown timer of 20 seconds, which is not ideal. But luckily for us, the talent on the backpack reduces that cooldown from 20 seconds to 10 seconds. So every 10 seconds we can refresh one of our skills. Now the problem with the CC build, the reason why people go deep into skill and no damage is because they're trying to build up skill haste to keep those CC abilities coming out on time, right? But with this, since we can ping pong back and forth, we literally don't have to get any skill haste at all. In fact, it is the one reason why I'm able to spec into a little bit of damage here. So the idea behind this is for each piece here, we're going full status effects on the attribute. And on the mods, I'll get into this a little bit more. I have skill haste mods here. I'm going to explain how this could be better in just a minute, but I'm going to go through all the gear first, and then we'll come back to this in just a second. So, like I said, all of the pieces for hardwired are rolled max status effects. This is what you want, and this is what's going to make your
backup request.
Excuse me. This is what's going to make your CCs last longer, is these status effect rolls. You want to get as many of these as you can on the hardwired pieces to boost the length on your blind and your EMP, to make sure that they last long enough so that way when this cooldown comes back, because we're refreshing it with hardwired, you're ready to go. And with this build currently, I have about a 2 to 3 second lag time between each blind, so I can throw my blind out. 10 seconds later, I'll EMP, I'll get the blind back, and if I wait 10 seconds again, I can throw the blind out, And the buff on the blind lasts for, or the debuff I should say, lasts for about 17 point something seconds. So we're looking at a 2 point something second window of mobs actually being able to shoot, which, I mean, yeah, it could be better, but come on, that's not bad. Same thing with the pulse. You know, the pulse is a little bit shorter. We're looking at a 11.2 second duration on the pulse versus this is a 17.4 blind duration. So all in all, we're pretty solid here. The EMPs come out quick. Same thing with the blinds, and you can effectively chain your CCs to make sure that mobs are not doing any damage to your party or very little. Beyond that, what we have here is, you know, exactly what you'd think, a DPS chest. We're going for crit chance. We're going for crit damage. The only other weird thing is Overwatch, and you might ask me, like, why? And really, my main thing is I'm not going to be doing the most damage. I'm not even going to be close to, like, a pure DPS build. But I can do a little bit of damage. And not only that, I can buff my other DPS in the group. And when you're doing legendaries, the more buffs you can throw out to the entire group, the better off you're going to be. So Overwatch, if I stay in cover for 10 seconds, gives myself and my entire group 12% weapon damage and skill damage for as long as I stay in cover. And cover to cover retains that buff. So I can literally leapfrog from cover to cover in the middle of a fight, and everybody's keeping that 12% damage buff rolling the entire time. And that's why I picked Overwatch here. Could I go with something that's, you know, a little flashier, a little bit more damage? Sure. But I like this. I think it helps everybody out, and for me, it makes the build feel a lot more useful. So that being said, you know, what we're in effect trying to do is, you know, my goal was to get my M1A damage up to like 1.5 million or so, if I could. It was not really something that most people consider possible, but I can tell you with utter certainty right now, I'm hitting for that with my M1A, even without Rifleman. So let's take a look at the weapons here. I've got an MG5, big shocker, right? And I took Vindictive on this. And again, this is the whole buff mentality. Killing an enemy with status effect applied grants you and all allies 15 within 15 meters, 15% crit hit chance, 15% crit hit damage. So this, in essence, is like an overcharged Coyote Mask buff, if you can think of it that way. Whenever I kill a target, this buff goes up, and the entire group is getting that much more damage out of everything, which is nice. And then, of course, on the M1A, I took Perpetuation. Headshots grant 50% status effect damage and duration to the next status effect you apply. So when you know, what I will do is I'll take a headshot right before I throw my blind out, and I get that 50% status duration, which is really, really nice, especially on like a heavy or something like that. It pretty much guarantees that my blind is going to last until my next blind comes out every single time. So I like that a lot. That in essence is the build for the most part. We are using the Technician specialization, and we're using this specifically for the extra skill tier, because if you notice here, I've got 4 skill tiers on my gear, which is nice, but if we can use that and bump it up to a skill tier 5 for my blinder and my pulse, it's going to make it even that much better and last that much longer. Sidearm, not a big deal. As I said in the DPS video, it's your personal preference here. I like the shotgun, and I already explained why. If something gets low and I just need to blast it really quick to kill it, this is usually my good answer for that. The other nice thing you get about with the Technician skill, or specialization rather, is the EMP grenade. Very underutilized, very undervalued, but it is extremely powerful if used correctly. It can help enemies to stop from advancing. If you've got, like, you're in a legendary and you've got 5 enemies pushing towards you, you throw this out in front of them and they're less inclined to keep pushing. In fact, they'll probably retreat a little bit, which is really nice. The objective isn't always to hit the enemies with the grenade. Sometimes it's just to put it in the right place to keep them from moving into an area that you don't want them to. So keep that in mind with your grenades and stuff. Real quick, I'll give you a little showcase on, how the damage looks with this build, right? And keep, I have no chest or backpack talents that give me extra damage. Stats wise, we are at 43.7% crit chance. We are at 55.8 crit hit damage and 85.4 headshot, which isn't stellar, but keep in mind, I've got 4 skill tiers on my gear. I'm only using 2 DPS pieces, guys. This isn't bad. With somebody in the group with a coyote mask, I'm damn near crit cap for this. So this is really, really nice. And what I was saying before about the mask in the backpack, you can make this even better too. If for some reason or by luck you can, either get this to drop or craft a mask with a natural status effects roll, preferably god rolled, but you'd want it to be pretty high. You can re-roll the mod slot to a red and get even more crit chance or crit damage to boost your damage even more. That's what I'm working on now for this build. Is I'm trying to, get a good piece to drop with a max status effects roll, so I can roll that mod slot to a red and throw some more crit on my build, throw some crit damage on my build. Eke out the damage a little bit more. It's not going to be super important, but you try and get everything you can out of these builds. So I don't know if you notice underneath my ammunition counter, you can see that the Overwatch buff is applied. I've been sitting in cover for at least 8 seconds, so that's there. We also have the hardwired buff up. But real quick, I'm going to show you some weapon damage, and then I'm going to show you kind of how the ping pong effect works on the skills. So I've got my MG5 here, just on a standard body shot. I'm hitting for 94k. There's a 147 crit. So it's not bad, and you'll have to excuse my potato aim here too. The damage isn't terrible. It's not, stellar like your straight DPS build, but it's going to help your team more than just sitting in cover the entire time, not really shooting anything, because it doesn't really amount to much. Now with the M1A, that's just, a regular headshot, 974k. If I can get a crit, 1.3 mil. Now this is before any buffs from your party or anything along those lines. And I could probably get a lot more out of this if I were to spec into a damage talent for my chest piece. And certainly once I'm able to reroll those mod slots to reds like I was talking about before. But this damage is respectable for considering that I'm mostly a skill build. There's not really many skill builds that can dish out this much damage and still be effective in what their job is in providing CC. So bear that in mind. Now let's go over here really quick. We'll take a look at this for a second. And I'm going to kind of show you how the skills work out. So I'm going to use the blinder first. And keep in mind, and we found this out kind of by accident, but you have to have the EMP pulse on your Q, and you have to have the blinder on your E. I don't know why it works that way. It's just a hardwired thing, but there it is. You have to have those skills in that order on your bar. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work right. And keep in mind, it can still bug out a little bit sometimes. The set isn't perfect, but it works well enough, often enough, where it, we found it to be very effective in legendaries. But the way the binder works, you're going to hit your E. You're going to light up as many targets as you can with it. I think with the current skill tier, which is 5, I can hit up to like 12 or 14 targets, which is beautiful. One thing I will tell you is if you don't aim in a direction away from your cover, sometimes you'll throw your blinder into your cover and it'll destroy itself. So once I mark everything up, I usually aim up about 45 degrees. Oh, let's try that again. I'll usually aim up about 45 degrees and then throw the blinder out. And it's not wanting to cooperate with me here. Hang on one second. Yep, there it goes. And it hit the ceiling and broke. So you kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. When you're doing CC, when you're throwing out your blinds, you want to make sure that you're in an area that's reasonably free of obstacles. So that way when you throw it out, it's not going to do what it just did to me for you guys, right? So let's try this one more time. I swear we're going to get this right. And for whatever reason, my computer is being laggy. There we go. Blinders out, hit the ceiling again. Yeah. What I'm probably going to do is show you guys some showcase from a legendary. I think that might be easier. But essentially, you would throw out your blind, you would wait 10 seconds, and you'll see the hardwired buff pop up on your buff bar, the little gray debuff timer. Once that rolls off, then you're going to hit your EMP jammer. It'll instantly refresh your blinder, and back and forth and back and forth. Make sense? Great. So I'm going to cut the video here, and I'll get you guys some footage of like a legendary or something that we're doing to show you guys how this works in a real world scenario, I guess, or real game scenario, I guess would be a better phrase. All right, guys. Well, that's it for CC build. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can put them down below, and appreciate you guys. Thanks.